Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the Overcoming Your Story podcast. Today, our guest is CG, and she's calling us all the way from Uganda. I will not introduce her much. She's a creative artist. She does many different things like photography, videography, and she expresses her ideas and her through writing and spoken word. CG, welcome to the Overcoming Your Story podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I love how you said photography, videography. I'm like interesting because I like I like how do I put this? Getting photographers or videographers to bring my ideas to life. But as me, it's really just with my phone. But it is something that I'm going to be studying in like a grad certificate to kind of learn those skills because yeah, I would say that like to say I'm an African Canadian creative. But yes, my name is CG, or my full name is Kabasigyi. And yeah, I'm a student as well, studying psychology and going on to doing interactive media management. So yeah, I love so many different things, but that's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Thank you for doing this. You're such a well-rounded person. I saw that in your studies. I think you also study entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I studied business management and entrepreneurship. I graduated in 2015. I loved that course so much, but it came with me having so many different ideas and not knowing like where to really begin. First, I was like, I think I should have a home daycare. And then I wanted to do like coaching for young people. And, I just would come up with so many different ideas. But I was like, okay, let me first get some work experience and kind of get to know who I am more before just jumping into it. I wasn't a big risk taker back then.
And then how did you get into psychology?
So, with that, I would say it came about because of my own experiences with mental health. So, like from the time I was 18 and I actually went to university in the beginning, I was super confused. Well, I would say, okay, I knew what I kind of wanted to do in school, but with African parents, they sometimes have their own agenda for you. So I went that direction. I pretty much, truthfully, I had no choice. And I was studying linguistics because I really like languages as well. But it was really overwhelming, and I that's when I started to kind of have experiences with depression, suicidal thoughts, like things that I didn't understand. um, and so I would say from 18 until like I would say 30 years old, which was just last year, I've dealt with different like I would say mainly depression and anxiety, like just struggling to really find my way through that. And I've also lost two friends to suicide. So because of that, and seeing what's happened in like the last 2 years in the world, I realized that it's really important to have more people in this field to understand it, and especially those who have experience with it. So last year, that was one of the second friend who passed away by suicide. That's when I was like, you know what? I'm going into this field. And I had gotten feedback from my friends all the time. They're like, yeah, you're like the therapist friend. Everyone comes to you to talk to you. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? This is something where I feel like it's a gift that I have and lived experience. So I was like, I might as well go into the field, but I'm doing it in a way where I'm going to join like my creative side with the psychology and merging it together.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. Because it's been proven that art is a way to heal when you have depression or even childhood trauma. Or so I love hearing that you're going to combine your creative side and the psychology side. If we rewind it back, so this podcast is geared towards women, Black women, African women like you and me. What would you give as a message to our listeners hearing your story today?
A message I would say honestly is get to know who you are at your core. We've been told who we are for so long. We've been rejected in so many different ways. And I think that it's important to know who you are at your core, because then you can discover more about your purpose and also find strength in loving yourself as who you are. Um, that's one thing. My sister's a therapist. She's also an inspiration for me. She's my younger sister too. Graduated from her master's recently, like doing her thing in British Columbia. Yeah, but she did an interview with me, and it was about uncovering your core, and it was all about my lived experiences of growing up in a predominantly white city where that we experience a lot of racism, and then also being raised by a very traditional Ugandan, like traditional Ugandan parents. So I had like this conflict of my identity. So that's why go back to that with Black women, is like, especially if you've been raised in different countries where you have a clash of like who you are, getting to know you outside of culture, outside of society, stereotypes, and being at peace with that. Because I think that's where you're really able to blossom once you discover that.
Oh, yeah, it totally makes sense. That's the reason why I'm even doing this podcast, because I think that's where true freedom lies, when we put away all the things we are supposed to be and according to what, and tap into ourselves and know ourselves. And that's where we can find real freedom and face the world. And when things get difficult, we know why we are standing. So, yeah. Bringing it back, you touched on it already a little bit. So, how did you grow up? Like, where were you born? How did you grow up? How did you see life growing up? Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Newmarket, Ontario, so which is north of Toronto. And yes, it was a predominantly white town when I was growing up. My family and I think another family were the only Black families for a long time. And so I actually thought I was born in Uganda. So because of just the way my parents raised me, like I was convinced I was born in Uganda. Um, I have a story that I share sometimes where I was on the playground as a kid, and these kids asked me like, "Were you born in Africa?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then they asked me, "So did you play with monkeys?" And I said yes, because I thought that was so cool. I didn't know. Yeah. Then they started making fun of me, and that was a very significant moment in my life where like I started to realize I was different and experiencing rejection. um, so yeah, I really saw the world growing up. I was just confused, truthfully. I'm just like, who am I? But at the same time, we had a Ugandan community in Toronto. So my parents would take me, into the community a lot, which helped me kind of form this more like an identity where it's like, oh, I feel like I can relate to these people because we're in Canada, but we're Ugandan and we're eating the same foods. And, like the friends at school may be making fun of me for, but like I can be eating freely with these friends of mine in Toronto. Um, and yes, I have three sisters. Two of them are older than me, and then I have a younger sister. And yeah, all of us in our own ways have really experienced like our own difficulties of just navigating being Ugandan Canadian. So yeah, then I said now when I went off to university, that's where like just life hit me and I'm like, who am I? Because daddy's telling me I'm this, but these friends and society is telling me I'm this, and I myself don't feel like any of these things. Um, but yeah, I'm very thankful though to how my parents did raise me with knowing my culture. And like my dad said from a long time, you're not Canadian. They'll never accept you as Canadian. You're Ugandan. And even more so, he emphasized like my tribe, like you're a Muchiga. So yeah, that's why I have like a big thing with my culture. That's why I'm here in Uganda trying to move here.
I just love hearing these stories, and because I know they will give perspective to many people. or just make people think about their own stories and their own lives. So it's amazing to hear. Some of it resonates with when I moved to rural Switzerland. So yeah,
Wow.
that
Yes.
part of being like one of the two only black families in town, and the you went to school with monkeys in the tree, yeah, all those kind of
Yeah. The staring at you, like you become
yeah,
so conscious of being different
yeah,
and black. It's
yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah, people really look at you as holding you accountable to how you behave. So every time I stepped out of my home, I put on a mask because I knew people were looking at me, where I stepped, how I spoke, how I ate, did I eat properly? Like we internalize these stares, and then we kind of use it. I used it to check myself when I was in public. It just became tiring. Yeah. Then I got to that point just like you, like, but who am I at the end of the day? I have all these roles, daughter, this, that, but who is Miriam, you know?
Yes, exactly. It's really important because it impacts your self-esteem and everything. That's really what it did to me. And I know that's where a lot of the depression for me came from. It is that like low self-esteem because I didn't know who I was. I completely lost my identity.
So when did you first notice that you had low self-esteem?
I would say in the seventh grade because I used to cover myself a lot. I used to cover my behind. And I don't even like for an African woman, like especially Ugandan, I don't have a big butt. I'm just going to be straight up. But, compared to typical, Caucasian growing up, I did. So people would talk a lot about my butt and my lips, and I would be super insecure about that. Like, I remember on the playground again, this guy was like, "You have really big lips." And I'm like, okay. Or like, you have black gums, black lips, everything dark, dark, dark. So that's where my self esteem definitely started to decline. But then in high school, I there was it was more multicultural because I went to a Catholic school and like there was like people who came from outside of the city, and literally I saw Asians, I saw Spanish people, I saw Italians, other like Jamaicans, other people that weren't just like European, and I just gravitated towards them. I felt like finally we can all share something in common where we have like a different culture, and that's when I felt better about myself. And then when I went to school in Ottawa, Ontario, I met so many international Africans. That's where no, I met Brenda. Sorry, before that, but I know Brenda from everywhere.
Yeah, Brenda, she's very international.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I forgot I met her in Hamilton. Okay, I have my story is actually so long. I'm really taking it in. I've been everywhere. So Hamilton before Ottawa is when I met a lot of international students, and that's where my confidence started to come back. Like I remember. I started to wear my hair natural in Ottawa, and people giving me compliments about my hair, my skin. I felt so happy and alive. Then when I moved back home to Newmarket, I was working at the Apple store and it was predominantly white. And there again, my self esteem was low. And so I would, I know you didn't ask me this question, but I thought about it. I would genuinely say my self esteem, like raising my self-esteem or having higher self-esteem happened within the last year, and it was all my sister interviewing me about who I am at my core. When she just started to unpack certain ideas that I didn't realize I had about myself or how I walked into the world and like was super conscious of being black.
Please share which ones. I also struggle with self-esteem, and I know many of us do, right? Many of us Black women, we struggle with our self-esteem. And sometimes we come across as so strong that people wouldn't think we could even have self-esteem issues, right?
People are always surprised when I tell them like low self-esteem, depression, everything. They're like, "Really? You look so happy, whatever." I'm like, "This light that shines is God." I'm telling you because when the light is off, I'm just like I'm just sad. And I just like to be honest in that way. But yeah, I would say like one thing is like going into a store. I would always feel like I have to make sure nobody thinks I'm stealing anything, you know? Or like, or even being walking behind like old white people, I'm just like, oh, they probably think I'm going to steal from them, but it's like I've never done that in my life. But because that's just such a stereotype, it's now embedded in my mind, like, make sure you're the like good black person, quote unquote. And speaking of that, when I was younger, and I would go over to some of my friends' houses, their parents would introduce me as like, okay, yeah, this is CG. Oh yeah, her dad's a doctor. It's almost like they had to qualify me, like, oh, she's this black friend of hers, but her dad's a doctor, and I don't like.
She's not like the others.
Exactly. And I noticed that too, how they would treat me differently. Or because I don't have an African accent, because I was born in Canada, people will treat me differently than those who have an accent. And I would see it happen in my face. And I'm like, no, that bothers me so much. It's so ignorant. So I would always like stand up for people. Like, how can you say that? Like it's not a compliment to be the good black girl or good black person. The one that's accepted because you sound more like them or something. No.
Yeah, yeah, that resonates to a lot. No, it doesn't feel right, right? It doesn't. And I always felt like, in Switzerland, it was like, oh, you're not like the others. I'm like, those boat people you see on TV, those are my brothers.
You
I'm
know?
like, I'm them, they're me.
Yeah.
We're the same.
Yep.
We're the same. Those are my brothers right there. It's
Yeah.
just sad. They cannot make a living on the continent, or they don't see how they could make a living there, and they're running away from their home. That's the sad part, but we are not different. It took time for me to be able to say that, right? Yeah. At first, you're just uncomfortable and you don't know what to say, but yeah.
Yeah, nobody chooses like where they're born, what family they're born into, what skin color they're born into. Like, so it's just pure ignorance. Ignorance, classism, racism, all of that. It's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah. I always think about it and I think I'm like, wow, some people feel they're superior because the lottery of life made them to be born, I don't know, in Canada, in France, or, it's it's so random. I mean, it's just it's a lottery of life, and then oh, we know better, we manage things better. I don't know. I always found that really unfair that people don't think more deeply about that, and then I think there would be more compassion among humans. Um, so yeah, those interviews. I'm very interested in those interviews with your sister.
Like she just would be asking me about because it was for her thesis paper, right? About like black people who grew up in who were raised in a white institution. I forget the title of it, but yeah, it was just my experiences growing up in a white school, how that affected me, how I see the world, how I see myself. Um and yeah, I wish I remembered more of the questions, but that was the general, yeah, the general idea of it. And another thing too, talking about the cultural clash now between being Ugandan and Canadian, and kind of wrestling between those two identities. But I would say getting to know more about my history and my roots also did help my self esteem, because I used to not like my name, Kabasigyi. My middle name is Bakohondo. I used to pretend my middle name was Kate as a kid. Like I don't have any English name, but because I didn't have an English name, my sister and I made up English names. Hers was Anne, and I was Kate, because we didn't want to be, ourselves. Or I started introducing myself as Kay as well, just because I didn't want to have to explain Kabasigyi.
There's an age where we want to fit in, right? So it's totally normal, I would say. Now that you're home, so how do you feel right now? You're in Uganda.
I feel good. This is the fifth time I've been in my life. I first came when I was 15. My dad kept us away because there was Ebola. He was like, "No, my daughters aren't going to Uganda." So the first time experiencing was at 15. But now, sorry, every time I would come, it's like something, it would do something to my soul. Like it was like this missing piece, and then I'd be happier. I'm actually happier in Uganda. Like I can handle things better. Like when I'm feeling sad or anxious or anything, I'm like, but I'm in Uganda. When I walk on the streets, people look like me, you know? Um, it's life, you know. People can be in the greatest situations financially or not, but people know how to laugh, how to smile, how to share. You know, it's just, it's really warm. And it's a lockdown too, but I still feel the warmth. And just like small things that make me laugh, like for example, the dogs outside around the area who that bark all night. It annoys me, but at the same time, it entertains me because I'm like, it's almost like Africans, we're just used to like everything. The dogs can be barking, the chickens are, you know, making noise, roosters, we're used to everything. People are playing, blasting their music across, and you're dancing to someone else's music, you know, cooking in the kitchen. Like, I love it. I feel like it's so rich, and you know that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. That's in Africa. You feel surrounded by a village of people. I've been so blessed to have like my cousin, you know, I'm staying with her right now, but if I need to go stay with another cousin, they'll welcome me in Canada. It's not like that. Everyone is much more isolated and every man for themselves. It's so fast paced. So yeah, I feel happy. I've met people that I didn't even realize like I could easily meet, like other creatives that I want to work with. And so that really inspired me even more. Then one of my friends took me to his studio. I was doing some spoken word there. He's like, "Yeah, these guys can make a beat for you." Like things just happen quickly here, right? So I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And for your mental health, we know that having a community or feeling there's a community around you is very important. So
That's the big reason why I came. Like everyone was like, "How can you go to Uganda in a pandemic?" I'm like, "I've been isolated for too long and it's impacting my mental health. I need to be out of here. I need to be around family and friends." So
I wanted to ask you when you were talking, a question just came into my mind. So you spent 15 years in Canada. How did it feel when you first landed in Uganda and you saw like all Black people around you?
oh my goodness, it was so overwhelming. I was like, what? I cannot believe this. It was a constant shock. And another thing too is because I have like a Ugandan community in Toronto, that was like my mini Uganda. So now, you know, it's almost like that's all I knew. So now coming here, it's like I'm seeing 10,000 uncles, you know, that I knew from Toronto. Like uncle, there's one this uncle who came to mind, Uncle Louis. You know, so it's like, oh, that person sounds like this person, or this person sounds like daddy, or now I understand why my parents are the way they are. But I know too when I first landed and there were so many bugs in the airport. I know it sounds so stereotypical, but seriously, yeah, I was that Canadian kid, like, oh my gosh, I can't.
Oh, my kids are like that. I'm laughing at them because the day we would go home, oh my goodness. Yeah, I would be laughing a lot because one single one fly, they're freaking out.
Literally. Oh my goodness. But then after some time, I just loved it. And my parents took me to my village as well. I was like the only one out of my so it was my younger sister and my cousins. They were like so over the village so quickly, but when I would see like the kids coming up to you and dancing and loving, oh, I loved it. It did something to my soul. So
That's amazing. In our community, sometimes it's hard to talk about mental health or even recognize, as you so openly recognize, that people suffer from depression, anxiety. Like, what direction do you think we should take with that?
oh yes, definitely more conversations. Like that's why I decided like so 2014 is when my the first friend unfortunately uh passed away by suicide. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm not going to keep quiet about my struggles. And I posted on Facebook. I was like, I don't know what I said, something about like how, you know, this friend is someone who is smiling all the time, but I'm not so surprised because I'm the friend that's smiling all the time and I can relate to those feelings, you know. I shared my story and I had friends reach out to me saying that they felt the same way but have never opened up about it. So I since then I was like, as hard as and uncomfortable as it is, I'm going to keep talking about it. And now in the last 2 years, it's like everybody is okay with talking about it, at least in like Canada and America. Um, and I can see now, like within the African communities, people are slowly starting to. But it's also hard. Like, for example, I know in Ugandan culture, and I'm sure so many other African cultures, we're used to keeping quiet about things. You don't talk about it, you know? Either you keep it to yourself or within your family because there's so much stigma, or anyone with mental health, you know, they call you mad. So, I just think that whoever is comfortable with just being like, you know what, I have gone through it or I'm going through it, we have to keep having these conversations. One thing that's really helped me and saved me was when I was battling the thoughts of suicide, going online and reading other people's stories. Then I'm like, oh my goodness. So this is normal. This happened. This isn't, you know? So yeah, I would definitely say conversations. And for myself, like I'm thinking of different things that speak to us as African people. And I know that music is one big thing. So I'm going in that direction of thinking of ideas of making like hosting like weekends where we incorporate African music. I'm working on an app as well that's going to incorporate Afrobeats and different musics for healing. So yeah, just finding solutions that speak to us. Like if traditional therapy isn't it, there are so many different ways that we can start to talk about it and heal.
Yeah, I encourage therapy, of course, but I also just encourage finding someone trustworthy and talking, even if it's just a friend, a cousin, if you're feeling really bad, just not to keep it all inside and be suffering in silence. Uh, I know that just going to a stranger and opening up, it's not really in our culture, but for those who are ready, of course, but for those who are not ready, just talking to someone. I saw your Afrobeat therapy music list. I listened to a few songs. I said, "Oh wow, that's so good."
Oh,
So I went on your link tree. So yeah,
oh yeah.
I do like that. I didn't know the songs, but they were the words and everything, the beats. They were really very calming for the soul, I would say. So
Yeah, it honestly, that's what got me through the lockdown in Ontario. I couldn't anymore. So I would start playing Afro beats. And then I remembered too, when I was like 19, I used to listen to this one Nigerian song by Timaya. What was it called? I don't remember the name of it. I'd have to like keep thinking for a long time about it to remember. But it saved me. Like I would just play it in the morning and that's what would get me motivated to get up. So I started to see like the power in that and music in general. Like before, when I was younger going through racism, I used to listen to Michael Jackson and Tupac Shakur because they would talk about things about racism, you know? So there's power in music. And yeah, Afro beats has just, it brings people alive. Like, and what I love too is it's across cultures now. Like in Toronto a couple summers ago, I went to this like patio place and people of all races dancing to Afro beats. I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, that's why I'm really pushing this Afrobeats therapy and making it a thing.
it's always surprising when you hear Afrobeat from. I heard I went to a party once in Switzerland, and this Turkish girl, she was singing a Nigerian Afrobeat song in pidgin English. I was just like, something is not right. Like she knew all the lyrics. I was like, no, this is not adding up. But we
Yeah.
were singing at the same time. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Even the new song by Pato Ranking, "Celebrate Me." The one where he's talking about celebrating ourselves while we are alive. When I listen to it, I'm like, yeah,
I don't know that one. I'm gonna add it to my list. I get so excited because I'm like so obsessed with looking up new songs. When someone tells me one that I don't know, I'm like, Thank you. I'm adding it because I love Patron Patron King, but I don't know that song.
Yeah, I think it's I don't. It's been maybe 2 months or something now. Celebrate me. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, you will like it.
Yeah. And honestly, our culture, Africans, Black people, if you really think about it, we're such trendsetters, you know? So I think that there's going to be a big future with this Afrobeats movement that's happening and has been happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so happy to see how from what I'm reading and seeing online that young Africans have taken it into their own hands in like even visually or in music videos, like representing themselves from their own perspective. I just find that so powerful, you
It
know,
is. It
so
is.
beautiful. I'm like, wow, this thing, it has the potential to like give confidence to young people that they can do it and
Yes.
and bring something to the soul of the world. Seriously.
Yeah, especially when years ago, the only media images of Africans were World Vision and all these other images that were negative or, sometimes, yeah, realistic, but not the full picture of who we are. So now it's like, yeah, we're really being showcased as the fullness of who we are. And we're an alive people. We come alive.
Hmm. No, it's amazing. I know you also write. Of course, I couldn't finish this interview without asking you about writing. I saw you wrote a poetic memoir, God Made Me African. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
I was just praying to God, and just like worshiping, because again, music. And I just started to cry. And I really realized like how much I had rejected myself, being African, and my features and my name, my culture, and everything, um, because of society and also church, like the church environment that I was in. Um, the African culture sometimes is demonized, and because of that, I just rejected that so much, but yet it's so who I am at the core. So now with this book, God Made Me African, I just began to release, and then it became, I was getting these ideas to make it like a whole spoken word album, I'll probably do that actually. But I thought to myself, no, you know what? Let me just write this out and release it to people, because I've had a fear of releasing written content. I can write like captions in my Instagram, or I'll do like a spoken word video, but to just the rawness of me writing, I would overthink it because I'm like, no, my grammar is off. This isn't right. It has to be like this. Um, but yeah, so like each one goes through different things. So I talk about I address, no, first I talk about just like myself, like who I am and how God made me woman, God made me African, God made me born in Canada, like embracing all of that. And then I also move on to talking about how, growing up, even Caribbean people rejected me. Like there was a time in high school where this girl asked me, like, "Are you Jamaican?" And I said, "No, I'm African." And she's like, "Oh." And so I kind of address that too in the book, where it's like, we have this division within our cultures, but yet, we are the same. And Africans too, we reject and stereotype against Caribbeans and African Americans. So I talk about that. Yeah, so just different kind of, I don't know how to put it. Just it's 7 chapters, very short, but yeah, I'm just addressing different parts of my life that kind of I wanted to heal from. And oh, it was healing. Like writing it and releasing it. Oh, so healing. Like I was like, okay, next.
Yeah, I wanted to ask her what the process did to you because right now I'm writing my memoir.
Hmm.
It's hard as hell. It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's incredibly healing. It's that kind of healing. I don't know. Maybe I would have needed to go 30 years in therapy.
Yeah.
The change it breaks in me writing my memoir, rewriting, editing. It's every time I don't want to do it, I'm saying, oh yeah, I will print it. I say, okay, okay, I'm gonna read it, and then move some things around, and then 2 days later, I'm saying, yeah, I'm gonna, and
Yeah.
it's a process, but it just makes me sometimes see situations that happen from a new light, and it's a gift. So yeah, um, yeah. So you said it was healing, right?
Yeah,
To write.
extremely healing. And then also getting like feedback from some people who purchased the book, I was like, wow. Like one of my friends, his feedback was so detailed and it was like, wow, somebody got it. You know? I'm like, at least if somebody can understand like where like my heart, because sometimes I'm afraid that I come off too strong or too harsh because I like to just be honest. That's just and that's, yeah, and that's part of also, you know, like the characteristics of my tribe as a Muchiga. Like we're known to be blunt, straight up, straight to the point. So but to get feedback from people who related to it or who understood or also could kind of got insight into my story being born in a predominantly white town. It was, yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I don't really market the book that much. I'm too shy in a way. I'm like, "Ah, whoever wants to get it, they'll see it, you know? It's just, it's, I get a little awkward in some ways like that. But I really encourage anybody who wants to write, like, not to overthink it. Me, my grammar is not, I'm not good with grammar, but my gift is just writing poetically. You know, whatever your gift is, whatever you want, it'll speak to somebody. Just release it. It's another form of therapy, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we learn from stories. Sometimes you read someone's account, like someone will read your book and they'll be like, "Oh my God, this is my story, but it's not written by me." Oh my God, only that connection in your mind that there's someone out there who understands what you've been through or understands your life story. It's healing actually because it breaks you from isolation. You're not alone. And then you're right about the that we don't care about grammar because it's in writing that you become a better writer. Like when I read things I wrote 10 years ago, I'm so, oh my God, who wrote this?
I know.
Because I've kept writing. So now when I read those things and then I see that okay, the writing was not strong or anything, but the only thing that has helped is that I kept writing. It's not because I didn't change. I just kept writing, and yeah, and there are people out there, it's their work to edit. So if you're too self-conscious about how it should be, like do the writing and give it to someone else. They will help to shape it or make it better. But don't stop yourself from writing because you think you're not a writer. Because it's yeah, it blocked me too for a long time. "Ah, but am I a writer?" I used to say, "Oh no, I'm not a writer, but I have a story to tell." Well, if you write, you're a writer.
Yeah.
That's
It's
you know.
true. Yeah, I get that too. Even with like poetry, like someone asked me the other day when I went to my friend's studio and I was doing the spoken word, they were like, "So are you a poet?" I'm like, I don't know. My friend's like, "Own it. Yes, just say it," you know? And I'm like, "I guess." But yeah, those titles it almost puts pressure. You're like, "Okay, now I have to be very, I have to perform 100% all the time." But yeah.
In the genre, there are different types. There are different types of writing, and ours belong. Yeah, it's because in our mind we think writing or spoken word or poetry it has to be this, and this, but not necessarily. If it resonates with people, it means it belongs. Just because you spoke about Ugandan food, so what do Ugandans eat? Please educate me.
Okay, so Ugandans number one. Oh my goodness, matoke, green bananas. Oh my goodness, like everyday matoke. That's what I now call it. I'm like everyday matoke. I'm not a fan of matoke, but eh, that's the Ugandan dish.
So
Um,
they pound it or what? Like they boil it, they pound it.
Yeah, so you can do it when it's pounded, which is like the most traditional way. And then there's something called katogo, where you can do like boiling it and then adding other things, either like peanut sauce, spinach, or you can have it with like chicken, beef. So many different ways of making katogo. Katogo is like a mix of things with the matoke. And then also I would say ugali, which we say posho or kaunga. Do you know what ugali
Mhm.
is?
Yeah, yeah, we call it fufu.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I know, and everyone. I'm so curious though if it's really the same as fufu because I've had fufu. They're similar, but they're still like a little bit different. But that same idea.
mm, yeah. But your own ugali, is it maize based?
Yeah, cornmeal. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, ours too.
the
Yeah,
same. Yeah.
there are different kinds. Yeah, but
Hmm.
my village is corn based, and they eat it morning, lunch, evening, every day.
Now that is my favorite. I can eat that all the time. I prefer it to rice. Like yeah, I love it. And to matoke. And then sweet potatoes, yam, and then of course like we call muchomo, which is grilled meat. That's another thing. Gonja, which is plantain, but boiled plantain, or you can have it fried as well. What else? Groundnut sauce. So like peanut sauce, peanut soup, however you want to say it, with spinach sometimes in it. Or there's like the typical one, you can have it plain or have it with fish in it. Oh, I love Ugandan food. We're more like vegetarian based, beans, peas as well. And then you can add like the muchomo. But I would say, because I'm familiar with like more West African foods as well, and I know that I would say West Africans seem to eat meat a lot more than we do, and apparently Kenyans do too. My cousin was telling me that, but yeah, you should try it. Ugandan food is good. It's
Yeah,
really good.
now
There's
yeah,
a variety.
I will try to find some.
Yeah, yeah. You're based in Ottawa?
Yeah, near
Oh,
Ottawa in
there's
Gatineau. Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you'll find some of those Ugandan. Actually, I know someone who makes Ugandan food. I'll give you her contact.
yeah, yeah. I love trying new food. So yeah. What's your routine in keeping your mental health at a good state? Like on a daily basis. What are the little things, or weekly or monthly? I don't want to put pressure like daily basis.
Yeah, I'm not that person. There's some people who are they're on point. Me. I'm too like free flow with things. But no, I would definitely say I'm very introspective. So like I like to reflect and deal with things. So if I know something is bothering me, I will, want to unpack. I recently started meditation. Meditation was very hard for me before, but now I'm learning to go through it and sit through it. Even listening on YouTube to like the inner child, like getting back in touch with your inner child. I didn't realize how powerful that is, but it's been healing.
I tried it one time. I was like, whoa, I need to be ready for this.
Right.
It's powerful. Yeah, you're right.
Very powerful. So yeah, and then now I got a personal trainer. So exercise, incorporating that into my life because I would say at my core a very like active person, but so when I'm not and I'm too sedative, is that the word sedative? Yeah. I'm not, my mental health just declines. And then also drinking lots of water, lots and lots of water. And creating because that's something that brings me alive. And now I'm like, hey, incorporate creating into your routine and Afrobeats music, literally. Just play that on. If anyone wants to listen to my playlist, Afrobeats Therapy, literally by KB Mulera, I'm telling you, you just press play and you're like, you know what? Okay, I can push through this. I can push through this day. But yeah, finding ways also to laugh. Laughing, is a good thing too. And also, one thing I've been slacking on, but which helps me a lot, is journaling out my thoughts. Just releasing thoughts, releasing or speaking. Sometimes I'll even put on my voice note recorder and I just start speaking or singing or just making noises. I'm like, just release whatever's inside of me.
Therapist advised that I could just record myself just for myself, and I talk and talk and talk and talk. or with your voice. Yeah. Just talk, talk, talk. What's bothering you on that?
Yeah. Oh, another thing too is limiting social media time, especially like Instagram. Sometimes when you're scrolling or consuming too many different things, people's thoughts, people's opinions, images, it really does something to the brain. So yeah, I limit that now.
How do you do that? I'm trying to do that. I'm not very successful. So how do you? Are you just disciplined?
No, I'll delete the app from my phone.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're radical like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just because because it can become habit. So when the app's not there, I'm like, oh yeah, nope, you're off it. And then I'm not like what I'm going to do since I'm going to be creating more content that I'll be sharing on Instagram. I'm gonna actually schedule Instagram time. Other than that, be off. Be in the present moment, because you can get so lost. It's like its own little virtual world on Instagram. Yeah. So, but deleting the app, I think is really helpful for me.
Yeah. I try to produce sometimes more than I consume. I shifted my use because before I was like just consuming, never posting, even on Facebook and everything. I deleted all the apps for like 1 year. And then when I came back, I'm like, okay, I can consume, but I have to produce. Not I have to. I will produce and post and not just sit there and consume because you're right. The human mind was never made to have access, such intimate access to the lives of 1,000 followers, I don't know, 2,000 people, what they're doing. It was never meant to be like that? And do you read? Do you like reading?
So I would say I read, but I read like short stories or like I don't know if you know the book After the Rain by Alex L. This African American artist or author.
No, I've heard of her, but no, I don't know the book. Yeah.
Yeah, so she has very short chapters, reflective chapters. Those are the kind of books that I can read, or I listen to audiobooks or reading blogs. I am not the long novel reader. My attention span, no. It's not there. I'm too visual and audio based that after a while I start to fall asleep. And that's why my grammar isn't the best. I already know. I'm like, yeah. That's why I'm like, I'll stick to poetry where you can get away with like not being. Yeah, but I would love to be that person that's like, yeah, I'm a big reader and I read this and that, but no.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I know
It's
people
okay.
always assume they're like, yeah, if you're a writer, you're a reader. I'm like,
Well,
well, yeah.
do you have any final remarks before we wrap this up?
Um, yeah, I think I would say to whoever is listening, whatever it is that it may sound so like typical, but like if there's something that you've really been wanting to do, just do it. This year, just do it. Life is really short. Losing friends under the age of 30 has, really impacted me to realize that like if I'm going to live this life, let me live it. Let me do what I want to do. Um, without being afraid of what people will think. Because when you pass away, those same people who judge you will be there like, oh, I knew her. She was this, she was that. So yeah, just go for it. If it's writing a book, if it's going back to school, like I'm 31 and I went back to school to finish my degree. After I dropped out of university. So in a pandemic, came to Uganda. Like I've been doing a lot of random things where it's like, if tomorrow God calls me and I pass away, I actually will have peace with my life because I decided to just take control, take a hold of it and do what I want to do. So that's what I would encourage anyone who's listening. 2021, just do it.
I love it so much. Thank you so much, CJ. Thank you. It was a great conversation.
No problem. Thank you. I enjoyed this as well.